The first thing we needed to do in those plateaus was investigate the story. The story I've heard about this shiny Eevee that seemed to wander the town. And I looked everywhere. I looked high, I looked low, I looked off the beaten path, and I couldn't find it. Anywhere I looked. And then just as I was giving up, I spotted it near the little pond in town. The rumor was true, there was a shiny Eevee waiting for me here. So of course, I had to catch it. And there are rumors of other shiny Pokemon around. But before we even think about that, we need to do some battling. I needed to test myself. And we had easy battles. We had some not so easy battles. We had even easier battles that were a good way to redeem ourselves from the near loss to a janitor. But we finally made it to the front gates of Mesagoza. And just as we were about to step foot onto the next step of our journey, we ran into a familiar face. A face that we will probably be running into quite a bit, I began to think. Of course, it was Nemona. And of course, I was not going to be allowed to progress in my journey until I battled Nemona for, I believe this was the second time now. And while it started off easy enough, we ran into a little bit of a problem. Her Dunsparce started to really roll through the team. Literally rolling through us. Literally rolling through us. But our new acquisition held on just enough to take out that Dunsparce. And we began to roll through Nemona now. But we had to take on her ace, which would normally be a starter Pokemon, which would normally be that Quaxly. But she switched it up on us. And it was her little Palmy, that is her ace, with its funky little light bulb hat. I knew I had a challenge in front of me. But I knew wrong. And with that, we were finally ready to visit Mesagoza and tackle these rumored hills and innumerable stairs. We were ready to get our steps in for the day. But what we weren't expecting was the sheer beauty of this place. The perfect mixture of nature and city. The biggest city in Paldea, she said. And we were visiting this first? I had always heard rumors of people visiting the big cities later on in their journeys. But it only made sense that the academy would be here, of all places. And with that, I decided before I would tackle the fabled steps of Mesagoza, I would take Nimona up on that recommendation. And so I went to Delibird Presents. A little bit off the beaten track, but this place is amazing. From held items for your Pokemon to Pokeballs to just about anything you can think of, really. I had to pick up a Miracle Seed to give to old Biscuit Maker, but I was just astounded at the inventory that they had here. And I heard from the clerk that they would even stock more for me the further along I went in my journey. And I did not know what they meant at the time, but what I did know is it was time to tackle the steps. And boy, did they give me a nice workout. But I got a nice little breather when I came across a few students. Team Star, they said. You know, you hear fables about Team Rocket and Team Aqua, Team Magma, these teams that have really done something, but Team Star just seemed like a group of kids harassing other kids, trying to get them to sign up by harassing them. So I had made the choice. I was going to step in. This didn't seem like something that should be happening on school grounds. I mean, if you're going to harass somebody, do it off school grounds, right? That's a joke. So I decided to teach Team Star a lesson. And after being greeted by the weirdest little team symbol ever, yeah, if this is what Team Star was going to be like, I was not worried at all. It almost made me wonder if that student really needed some help with them. Or was I just kind of punching down in this instance? After explaining to Nimona what happened, as she walked up right at the end, she had a little something to give me. I finally received my Terra Orb. So now when she did the terastallizing in battle, I could do the same. Although it didn't really seem like I needed to counter that with my own. Regardless, I decided it was time to test this out. And what better way to test out my new toy than against the other Team Star Grunt that was there. So I gave Biscuit Maker a fancy little flower hat. And we went to work. And by the power of flower hats, Biscuit Maker was able to make short work of this grunt. So now, student helped, Terra Orb acquired, Team Star chased off. It was time to actually run the worst stairs ever. You see, what I thought were actually the worst steps, just right behind me, were a precursor to the longest journey I've had to take yet. But we made it. We made it to the top of the steps, and we made it to the front door of the Yuva Academy. And of course, who else would we be greeted by but Nemona, who can't seem to understand why Pokemon should not be allowed to fire off potentially devastating attacks inside of the school. Penny. Penny is the student that we helped. Sounds like they too were new here. And with a little warning from Director Clavel about not battling and instead allowing teachers to handle that, we were sent off to our homeroom. Professor Jacques, who I would learn is the creator of the Pokédex app that's on our Rotom phones, was my homeroom teacher, and of course, just so happened to be Nemona's homeroom teacher. So after some introductions, and answering some questions. We found our seats and we began our first day at the Yuva Academy. So after class, we spent some time exploring the school, and we ran into our old pal, Arvin. Arvin, who, after getting beaten in our last meeting, now needed some help from me. Herba Mystica. A name I hadn't heard, but I had no idea just how popular they were in the region, and also how much of an impact they were going to have on my journey. So as Arvin told me about these Titan Pokemon, I knew I had to help him out. Because Titan Pokemon sound amazing. They sound difficult, but it sounds like a good challenge. So Arvin gave us the location of these Titans, and so our journey on the Path of Legends began. As we were leaving the cafeteria, we received a call from a hacker? Cassiopeia, their name was. A voice I had not heard yet, a name I did not recognize, but they brought up Team Star. Team Star, who you recall, we kind of put a beating to before we came into the school. And with some frustrations toward Team Star, Cassiopeia has enlisted me to help in bringing them down. A conversation, however, that I should not have had indoors, as Director Clavel was listening. And he brought up a good point that stuff should not always be discussed in public, but rather in private. So next I went to the staff room, where I recognized some of the teachers, and of course, there was Nimona. Champion Nimona, I should say, and she was speaking to somebody whose hair I was incredibly jealous of. A lady who had an aura about her, a presence that followed her everywhere she went. La Primera, Nimona called her. And this is what I think the folks over at Delibird Presents were talking about when they said they were going to give me more inventory access as I progressed in my journey. The champion rank, which I could only reach by completing the Pokemon League, seemed to help unlock some very good inventory for my journey. So of course I knew I was going to take advantage of the gym locations that Nimona was uploading to my Rotom phone and go make my name like so many others have in the past. And before I could continue my explorations, I was called to the director's office. On day one, I was already being called into the director's office. This could be bad, or this could be good. I'm not going to know until I get there. Professor Turo. Arvin's dad? I had finally met my friend's father. However, it was to be behind a TV screen. Some things seemed off, however. He knew that I traveled with Miraidon. He somehow knew my student ID, which seemed odd for him to know. Something just felt off. But of course, we were not talking in person, we were talking behind a TV screen. But that was good enough for me, as I learned that the reason Miraidon knew Arvin is because the professor once took care of it. So having agreed to continue to care for Miraidon and help it return to its former glory, the professor gave us his number and we were off. And yet another interruption, this time from Nimona. Shocking enough, how many times had we seen her today? But this was a good enough interruption, as I was able to finally see my dorm room. Complete with a kitchenette? I mean, I'm a child. I wondered why they were going to give me a little kitchenette. But I did not argue, because I had a bed, and after all the journeying I have done this day, it was time to lay my head down and rest. The days went by, and we finally reached the big day. An assembly was being held to tell us about something. But I had no clue how important this was going to be for the rest of my life. So off Nimona and I went to learn about the independent study? A treasure hunt. I had heard about this. We were finally being turned loose upon the world to begin our journey toward becoming the greatest trainer in Paldea. Or at least that's what some of us were hoping. Others were going to learn about nature. Others still science. But in the end, we were all going to find a treasure. Now it was time finally to explore this amazing new world that I was in. And with a warning again from Director Clavel, Nimona and I were off. But what was this great crater that he spoke of? It intrigued me. Maybe one day we'd be able to sneak in there and find out just why it's so forbidden. But that day would not come for a while, as I had a decision to make. What was my treasure? What am I looking for? So that was what the treasure hunt was really about. Just figuring things out for ourselves. Discovering what we actually enjoyed. This was going to be an amazing journey. And there were going to be plenty of Pokemon battles for me. Against Nimona, of course, because why wouldn't there be? So, it was time to decide, where are we going? Are we doing the Pokemon Gym Challenge, like Nimona thought we should? Or we're going to become the champion, which would involve beating her? Or we're going to help Arven with the Herba Mystica and the Titan Pokemon? Or was there a third option? Would I help take down Team Star? would I go to each of their bases, take down the bosses, and begin to dismantle this team. So many options. Did I really need to decide on just one? Or could I do multiple? But if I only chose, that would hurt the others. Or could I potentially do everything? Whatever happened, it was going to happen with Miraidon by my side. And with that, we discovered what the professor was talking about this mobility form that Miraidon had. And I knew right then that I was going to do everything. Take down Team Star, challenge the Pokemon League and become champion, take on the Titans and discover what these Herba Mystica were really all about. Make friends along the way, catch new Pokemon, look for these shinies that are said to be roaming around, and become the very best that the Paldea region had to offer.